last time I was here, I told a story of how I bought my dream car, but couldn't quite really afford to buy my dream car, but made it happen. Now I'm here to say that Lamborghini Aventador Hubert Era 001 is literally come to the end of an era. In July 2022, my Viola Ophelia Lamborghini Aventador suffered a catastrophic fire. It's hard to talk about, but looking back, it's got easier over time. That day, the 10th of July in the UK, was probably one of the hottest days in 2022. I had hosted the Arbar Festival, and my Lamborghini had to be there because the guys love Italian cars, and it was kind of an honorary Arbar for the day. It sat in the sun, baking in the sun all day, and we had a really good event with over 500 R baths and people taking photos of their R baths near the Lamborghini, etc., and people talking to me about the car. And it was kind of like the jewel in the petrol hedonism crown. I have several other cars that I love and enjoy over the summer months. I drove that car home. On the way home, I stopped at the Shell garage and filled her up. Drove home, dropped everything off, put my high vis to where it goes, and got myself changed and said to my daughter number 3 or 4, Tia, hey, do you want to go to Starbucks, get that coffees and cream latte that you like? And we went out for a little drive. Easy drive, drove to Starbucks, and then we just drove home. Literally 5 minutes away from my house, I see smoke behind my rear view, literally behind my seat, and I can smell something burning. We've got 4 sets of traffic lights ahead of me on my way home, and my mind just shifted into what the hell's happening right now. And I think the biggest fear for any supercar owner is this moment where you smell smoke, you see smoke, and you think, shit, my car's on fire. So my first thought is my daughter, make sure she's safe, we're safe, and I need to get this car off this busy roundabout and the traffic lights that are ahead of me. So I looked straight ahead. I said, Tia, there's a problem with the car. I think it's on fire. Dad's going to drive through some red lights, but I'll do it safely. I literally said these words out loud. I'd kind of, in a moment, kind of clicked and just had to be pragmatic and calm through this situation. Although inside I was like, what the hell's happening right now? And I could feel myself shaking. Drove over the roundabout, drove to the next set of lights, drove through those as soon as it was safe to, drove to the next roundabout. And at this point, I'm either going down the A6, and this is getting worse behind me. I said, Tia, grab the fire safety stick out of the glove compartment, which you have here in the US as elements. Grab that. Move your seat forward, because as soon as I stop, you need to jump out and run. She hands me the stick, she opens the door, she jumps out. I literally, in the same move, flick the handle behind the passenger seat to pop the boot, jump out, so the doors are up, flick the fire safety stick, put it in there. She's running. I call the emergency services, fire brigade. Straight away, I know exactly where I am, so I know the area. We're 2 minutes away from my house. At that point, I see my daughter's still running and she's nearly in the next village. So I was like, right, stop running now. You're safe. That's cool. I'm safe. And she makes her way back, and it's like, keep her on my side of things, so I know that she's good. It took me back to a moment where a friend of mine had his Nissan GTR catch fire, and he filmed it all. And I remember the comments like, why did he film it? And I'd spoken to him about this, and he said, you just have nothing else you could possibly do. You're so useless. There's literally nothing you can do. So from my point of view, at this point, the car's on fire, people driving past, and I could see the same cars driving to and from, and they're filming and they're photographing. And I thought, no, I need to film this. I need to control the narrative on this because it is a well-known car. The fire brigade arrived. They were absolutely brilliant. Everybody's safe. So now my mind has turned to, right, what's going to happen to the car? Well, what's going to be salvageable? This looks really bad. And the fire brigade arrive. They pull out the hose, brilliant, straight on it. And I honestly thought, these tanks are full, because there's twin tanks that are linked behind the driver and passenger seat. This is going to explode. The fire was literally behind the driver's seat where the fuel filler hose is. They get the pump going and they put out the fire, and then they move to the front of the car, the interior. They give the interior a really great wash, and I'm thinking, hold a minute, the roof's off, the door's open. They've just given the car a full interior wash. This is now flood damaged as well as fire damaged. It was at that moment, you probably can't see my eyes because I'm wearing sunglasses, I knew the car was gone forever. My wife came to pick up my daughter after fire brigade had left, and the car's just smouldering there. And I'm just took that time to sit down and look at the car. And I took 2 hours to wait for recovery to arrive. And I took that time to myself. I had loads of people messaging me saying they'd come and help me, they'd seen it, they'd heard about it. I just took that time to really just decompress everything that just happened. I think I was in shock, but the overwhelming level of messages that I started receiving from followers of my social media, from friends. By this point, I'd put out the video of the fire because I thought I need to control the narrative, as I said. I was blown away. It turned into one of the most positive 2 hours of my life, realizing that this car had touched so many lives and meant to people as much as it did for me. And also when we recorded the first VINwiki story about this car, some of the comments were, whenever he mentions Viola Ophelia, he talks about her as if she's a woman. I would say that she was the only mistress my wife would ever accept or appreciate, as it were. So it became very quickly a positive experience, knowing that petrol hedonism, we've built such an amazing community of petrol heads. You know, you see it sometimes how savage the comments can be when someone suffers an accident or, they've run out of talent, so they lost control of their car. But with this fire, there was not one derogatory comment I saw, and everybody was obviously making sure, obviously, we were safe as the occupants of the car, which we were, and a car's a car and it can be replaced. And I know that now, and it can be replaced. But for those 2 hours, it was an emotional experience, a bit of a roller coaster. I did have 3 friends come down and just like offer their support. They were local and they're part of one of the local car clubs, MKN. And Tony is kind of like a father figure to me, and we just had some time and like kind of put everything into perspective kind of thoughts. So the car's gone, it's been recovered, and I kind of went home that night. And obviously the worry is insurance. Am I covered for everything? A lot of modifications on the car. I had the car over just under a year on the road. So we had it over a year because we had lots of modifications done to it before we put it on the road. And the insurance renewal was coming up 2 weeks later. My wife's obviously in panic mode because what if this doesn't get paid out, and what if I haven't got it insured properly? And I'm just like, I can't think about that right now. So I spoke to my brokers 9 o'clock at night on the Sunday, and they were great. 9 a.m. on Monday morning, I'm sat at my desk since 8 a.m. just looking over everything. And at 9 a.m., the insurers actually phoned me, and absolutely brilliant. They phoned me at 9 a.m. on the dot. I thought it'd get to about 10, 11. I'm chasing them. They phoned me. Chiro, all your modifications, they're all declared. Your exhaust is declared, and you've got agreed value on the car. And I was kind of blown away because obviously I'd done this a year before, but I've always learned to insure everything properly. But I had all these thoughts overnight, and the panic set in and the anxiety. So it was like, okay, so this is good, but obviously they need to go through a process. Will the car be repairable? Will it be written off, as we say in the UK, given a salvage title? I went to see the car that lunchtime at Supercar Service. Good friend Raj had a good look over the car, and I think it was at that point we knew, you know, on that journey down to see the car was kind of like, we could do this on our YouTube channel, rebuild it, Phoenix from the flames, re-rising of Viola Ophelia. But when I saw it with Raj in the cold light of day, the still smouldering and the amount of damage in the engine bay and to the body, but then the added flood damage to the interior just made me realise the best thing would be for it to be written off and move on. The process was about 6 to 8 weeks with the insurers, and we then learned that the pre-2017 Aventadors had evap recalls. And fortunately mine had the recall, but the actual wording on the recall is, if you overfill your Lamborghini, you put it at risk of fire. Now, I had no idea about this, but when you get to the first click, the tanks are full. When I get to £88.50 on the first click, and this is exactly what happened on that day, I click till I get to a round number, like £90. So at that point, I've overfilled the tanks. Now, I had no idea that I was ever putting the car at risk. However, I'd also done 10,000 miles in a year and always approached it this way. Always rounded up to this number and click. And I've done that across all my cars. Now, knowing that I was putting it at risk of fire, I want everybody out there to please, when you get to that first click, whichever car you've got, whether it's a classic or it's a supercar, don't click any further. Because in the UK, we don't have the automatic stop that you have in the US. So you can keep filling, and you're filling up the filler neck all the way. Fortunately for me, because I filmed it, the insurers were able to see exactly where the fire was located, the intensity of the fire, the reason obviously why the fire safety stick couldn't cope with taking out the fire. Some people ask me why I didn't have a fire extinguisher. Well, I've done a big comparison on my channel before about fire extinguishers versus the Elements fire safety sticks, and they shoot for a lot longer and they can decompress the fire over a longer period of time, whereas a fire extinguisher shoots for about 8 to 10 seconds and doesn't really put it out. In this case, the fire was too far gone. Being who I am, as petrol hedonism and the community we've built, the outpouring of love and affection and just the sheer amount of messages, there's still messages on my phone that I haven't been able to read because there were so many of them, and it was just made it a real positive experience for me. So what do we do now? We build cars and customize them and enjoy them and then move on to another car, because we're just custodians at the end of the day.
Caramel is the perfect hack for any private party vehicle transaction. They'll make your deal run faster, safer, and smoother than you ever thought possible. And Caramel works with any buying or selling platform because they step in after you've made a deal to take care of all of the paperwork for the transaction and also all the forms and paperwork that you need with any DMV in any state to get your car registered and titled. They protect both buyer and seller by safely verifying identities, and they connect to both bank accounts so that you don't have to worry about wire transfers, certifying checks, and all the other risks that usually go with a private party transaction. And for a limited time, Caramel is free to both buyers and sellers. Of course, you can add things like shipping and protection packages and things like that, but all of that is optional. So check them out now at drivecaramel.com or at the link in the description below.